He was a pilot in the Iraqi military, so desperate that he ended his own life with sedatives. But what happened next completely changed his perspective on life and death. His soul left his body, soared into the sky, and arrived at a mysterious place where he encountered other souls and witnessed scenes beyond human comprehension. What was revealed to him about the future and the forgiveness he received will leave you in awe, and his story serves as an unmissable warning about the crucial decisions in each person's life. Hello, Eternal Bible Stories channel. My name is Fahad Al-Sadoun, and today I want to share with you an experience that may make you deeply reflect. My story begins in the 1960s when I was a military pilot in Israel. I was once on the brink of death and went through extraordinary events that science cannot explain. This experience not only completely transformed my life, but also opened my eyes to a new understanding of myself, the world, and what truly matters in life. Get ready to join me on a journey that may change the way you perceive life, death, and the mysteries hidden within them. In 1966, I was a pilot in the Israeli military, living in the glory of military victories, where honor and loyalty to the country were everything. During those years, I believed my life was bound to the mission of protecting my homeland, to duty, responsibility, and the inevitable challenges of war. But then, one day, everything changed. Suddenly, mercilessly, and without warning. I was arrested, not for desertion or treason, but for a decision that defied the orders of my superiors. I refused to fire upon a Palestinian residential area. I can never forget that moment. My finger was on the trigger, but before me were not enemies. They were innocent people. Families, children, individuals, unarmed and defenseless. The order echoed like a death sentence, but my conscience would not allow it. I chose not to pull the trigger, and that was why I was imprisoned. The Iraqi Ministry of Defense had no place for insubordination, and I was swiftly thrown into a small prison cell where light barely seeped through the cold cracks in the walls. I was not an ordinary prisoner. I was guarded strictly, like a traitor. I began to realize that this place might have been reserved for political prisoners, those who dared to stand against something greater than themselves. Each passing day became an unending nightmare. I was tortured not only physically but also mentally. The beatings, the endless interrogations, the sleepless nights, it all pushed me deeper into an abyss of pain and despair. I no longer recognized myself. Loyalty, honor, self-respect, all became meaningless when I was just a helpless man trapped within 4 narrow walls. There was no news of my family, no one to tell me what would happen next. I began to understand that I might never see the vast sky outside again. And then, the last glimmer of hope inside me died out. I decided to end my life. If death was the only way to escape this hell, I was ready to embrace it. I had secretly stashed a large amount of sedatives beforehand, keeping them as a gateway to freedom. I felt no fear. In fact, I felt relieved, knowing that I was about to reunite with my wife and child in another world, one where this suffering no longer existed. I swallowed all the sedatives and closed my eyes, waiting for eternal darkness to consume me. But instead of slipping into a peaceful slumber, I began to feel my body grow weightless. The space around me blurred, smearing like a fading painting. A strange sensation swept over me, as if I was being pulled out of my own body. I wanted to open my eyes, but I realized I was no longer lying on the cold prison floor. I no longer felt pain, nor did I hear the suffocating silence of the prison walls. I was leaving myself, and that was when everything began to change. As I slipped into a comatose state, everything around me seemed to slow down before quickly dissolving into darkness. But instead of losing consciousness entirely, I felt something strange, an eerie sense of weightlessness, as if I no longer belonged to my physical body. I opened my eyes, but the first thing I saw was not the cold, unforgiving walls of my prison cell. I saw myself, my own body lying motionless on the prison floor, my face pale and lifeless. A wave of terror swept over me. I wanted to reach out, to touch myself, to scream, but no sound came out. And then I realized a horrifying truth. I was no longer a physical being. I had become a soul, hovering above, witnessing everything as an outsider. I watched as the prison door burst open, soldiers rushing in, followed by a doctor and a nurse. They hurried to check my pulse, desperately attempting to revive me, but I knew at that moment that what they were doing no longer mattered. Just then, I felt a gentle pull, as if an unseen force was calling me. At first I resisted, but the pull grew stronger, lifting me higher and higher. I ascended beyond the ceiling, rising above the prison, gazing down as the city of Baghdad shrank beneath me. The streets I had once driven through, the towering buildings of the Ministry of Defense, all became minuscule, like pieces on a board game. I kept rising, passing through thick white clouds, entering an endless expanse where the vast blue sky enveloped me. And then I was no longer alone. In front of me, in the infinite void, stood two men dressed in immaculate white robes, silent yet as if they had been waiting for me for a long time. They had no wings, no blinding halos like the angels I had once imagined, but their presence carried an indescribable power. When I looked into their eyes, I saw no judgment, no anger, no cold detachment, only profound understanding and boundless compassion. One of them stepped closer, his deep, commanding voice resonating through the space. "Fahad, why have you chosen to end your life?" His words bore no reprimand, yet they pierced my soul. All the suffering, the endless days of torment, loneliness, and agony in prison surged back like a tidal wave. I could no longer contain my emotions. My voice cracked as I answered, "I am exhausted. I no longer have the strength to endure. I just wanted to be free from all this pain." The second man, who had remained still, now offered me a gentle smile. He approached me slowly, placing his hand on my shoulder, and spoke in a calm, reassuring tone. "We understand your suffering, but you do not have the right to end your own life. However, you have fulfilled your mission, and for that we grant you forgiveness." His words washed over me like a soothing wave of peace. I cannot fully describe the feeling they evoked. Relief mixed with sorrow, as if I had been carrying an unbearable weight for too long, only to realize now that I had never truly been alone. Though I had endured immense hardship, I understood that something far greater lay ahead. A strange sensation rose within me, not despair, not fear, but curiosity. Where was I going next? As I stood there, amidst the infinite space, a strange vision suddenly appeared before my eyes. Suspended in the vast expanse were 11 men dressed in white robes. They stood in a crescent formation, their faces calm yet majestic, surrounded by a radiant light. I could not recognize them, but there was something in their eyes that made me feel familiar, as if I had met them somewhere very far away from a very long time ago. A strange energy radiated from them, both gentle and powerful, making it impossible for me to look away. One of them stepped forward, his silver facial hair reflecting the shimmering light like stardust. I had never met him before, yet his voice echoed in my mind as if I had heard it long ago. He looked at me with kind yet firm eyes and spoke in a deep, steady voice. "Fahad, we have witnessed your act of humanity when you refused to attack civilians during a military operation. That very refusal saved many lives. Therefore we forgive you." I stood frozen, my entire body stiff, as his words pierced through my soul, awakening memories I had buried for so long. The moment he finished speaking, a blinding light enveloped me, and in an instant my mind seemed to unlock, as if an invisible door had been opened within me. Right before my eyes, the memories of my past emerged clearer than ever. Every moment, every decision I had made was replaying like a film. I saw myself sitting in the cockpit of a military aircraft, my trembling hand resting on the trigger as I received the order to fire upon a residential area in Palestine. Through the targeting scope, I saw innocent women and children, their terrified faces, their eyes filled with fear, desperately running to find shelter. The command to fire had been given, yet I could not do it. Something inside me held me back. An invisible force prevented me from carrying out what I knew was wrong. I recalled that feeling, an intense internal struggle between military duty and human morality, between orders and compassion. In the end, I had chosen not to fire, knowing that this decision might label me a traitor, that it could cost me my own life. But I could not close my eyes to the lives of the innocent. That memory had always troubled me, had made me question myself, wondering if I had been a coward for disobeying orders. I had feared that I had done the wrong thing, that I had lost my honor as a soldier. But now, hearing those words from the man before me, I understood that I had done the right thing. I had not only saved many lives, but that very action was the reason I was being forgiven. As I remained in shock at what was happening, the men began to move, leading me along a path made of crystal so clear it seemed to float in the air. Light from an unknown source reflected brilliantly on its surface, casting radiant beams that surrounded me like a miniature galaxy. I walked forward in awe, unable to believe that what was happening was real, that I was no longer a soldier trapped in suffering, but was stepping into a completely different realm. A world without war, without hatred, only filled with overwhelming peace. And then, the most miraculous thing happened. Before me, my entire life unfolded like an open book, each page turning one by one, each moment playing before my eyes with astonishing clarity. But the most extraordinary part was, I was not just seeing my life from my own perspective, I was seeing everything from God's perspective. I was no longer just a storyteller, I had become a witness to my own existence from a completely new angle. I saw the moments when I had done the right thing, even when no one was there to witness or acknowledge them. I saw the times when I had helped others without expecting anything in return, but I also saw the mistakes I had made, the moments I had hurt others, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Yet instead of being judged, I felt a profound understanding unlike anything I had ever known before. I realized that every action, whether good or bad, was a part of the journey. I was not being condemned, not being punished. I was being shown who I truly was in the purest way possible. I realized that everything I had experienced in life was not random, that the suffering I had endured was not a punishment, but a lesson meant to help me grow. And in that moment, I understood that my mission was not yet complete. There was still something I had to do, a path I had yet to finish walking. As I lifted my gaze, I saw the loving eyes of the men standing before me. They did not need to say anything more. I had understood that I had been forgiven. But more importantly, I had learned a great truth. Life is not just a series of random events, but a journey carefully planned with purpose. I had been brought here not to be punished, but to realize that I was never alone, that every decision I made had meaning, and that every lesson I learned was part of a grand design far greater than I had ever comprehended. And then I felt a shift. Something awaited me ahead, something far greater than anything I had ever known. And I knew this was not the end of my journey. One of the men standing before me slowly stepped forward. His eyes were not only filled with wisdom, but also carried a deep sorrow. He looked at me, his gaze piercing through every dark corner of my soul, then spoke in a deep, powerful voice. "Fahad, now you have seen what you have done, but look at the future of the world from which you have freed yourself." The moment those words were spoken, the space around me began to change. The bright sky suddenly darkened, and powerful bolts of lightning struck the ground, creating deafening explosions that seemed to tear through the very fabric of existence. I felt an invisible force pulling me forward, and then I saw it. A horrifying vision beyond anything I had ever imagined. Even though I had been a soldier, had witnessed war, had seen death firsthand, what I was looking at now was beyond all of that. I saw the earth convulsing in agony, as if the very soul of the planet was crying out in unbearable suffering. The ground beneath my feet trembled with a fury never seen before, and massive earthquakes ripped through the very foundation of civilization. Cities that once stood as symbols of human progress crumbled within moments. I saw Tokyo, one of the busiest, most advanced metropolises in the world, reduced to a lifeless wasteland in the blink of an eye. The earth cracked open like a gaping wound, swallowing entire districts. Towering skyscrapers, once engineering marvels, collapsed like feeble structures of sand, dragging thousands of lives with them. The Tokyo Tower, a beacon of culture and resilience, groaned as it fractured and collapsed, burying entire streets beneath its wreckage. In the United States, I saw New York, a city that once symbolized prosperity and hope, engulfed in an uncontrollable inferno. The Statue of Liberty, standing for centuries as a testament to freedom and democracy, was no match for the wrath of nature. A monstrous tsunami, rising higher than the tallest buildings, crashed onto the shore, sweeping the statue into the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. It was as if human freedom itself was being erased, swallowed by the merciless tide. Beneath my feet, massive fissures split the earth apart, stretching for hundreds of miles. Entire neighborhoods, highways, and farmlands were torn asunder, devoured by an endless abyss of darkness. I heard the screams, agonizing, desperate cries for help, but no one could save anyone. The ground showed no mercy. I saw California, once a land of dreams, now drowning under monstrous waves. The coastline shattered, and towering tsunamis, rising dozens of meters high, consumed Los Angeles and San Francisco in mere minutes. The mighty skyscrapers of these cities disintegrated as the unrelenting ocean swept through, erasing entire communities without hesitation. Sydney, Australia, suffered a similar fate. The ocean, once a thing of beauty, had become a force of unthinkable destruction. A massive tidal wave, stretching beyond the horizon, thundered forward, swallowing the city whole. Streets, homes, and people were pulled into the abyss as if they had never existed. London, a city rich in history, became a battlefield against nature itself. A storm unlike any before it descended upon the capital of the United Kingdom, ripping through the skyline, shredding everything in its path. The Big Ben collapsed under the sheer force of the winds, and Buckingham Palace was reduced to ruins, leaving behind nothing but debris and silence. I watched in horror as the skies darkened, thick clouds of smoke and ash choking the air. Planes, thousands of them, fell from the heavens like dying birds, their pilots powerless against the chaos consuming the world. Vehicles twisted into grotesque wreckage, roads became graveyards of metal and flesh, and no one, no matter how rich or powerful, could escape the devastation. Yet, as terrifying as these disasters were, they were not the worst of it. I saw war, the kind of war that made all past conflicts seem insignificant. The greatest nations of the world, America, Russia, China, Japan, Iran, Israel, and India, engaged in a final battle, a war that no one could win. I saw the President of the United States, pale and expressionless, delivering an urgent address from a hidden underground bunker, but I could not hear his words. For at that very moment, nuclear warheads were already in the air, carving fiery trails across the sky. I saw Vladimir Putin, the Russian leader, standing in a secure war room, his eyes cold as he gave the order to launch retaliatory strikes. Moscow's defenses activated, but it was too late. Nuclear missiles filled the air like shooting stars, but instead of bringing wonder, they brought annihilation. I turned my gaze toward China, where Beijing was already consumed by an unrelenting inferno. The city, once a powerful heart of industry and innovation, became nothing more than a desolate wasteland in an instant. Japan, a nation that had suffered the horrors of nuclear war before, faced its ultimate nightmare once again. The Prime Minister of Japan stood frozen in shock, his face drained of all color, as Tokyo disappeared under a blinding white explosion, vaporized before his very eyes. And then the final blow came from above. Death descended from the skies. I saw flashes of white light so intense that they turned the sky into a blinding sheet of fire. The world was swallowed in nuclear hellfire, entire cities erased from existence in mere seconds. Moscow, Washington, D.C., New Delhi, Paris, Berlin, Tehran, all reduced to ashes under massive mushroom clouds, the air thick with radioactive dust, poisoning even those who had survived the initial blast. I saw what came after. The streets, once bustling with life, were now littered with the skeletal remains of a civilization that had sealed its own fate. Those who were not immediately killed by the fire and shockwaves were left to suffer an agonizing death. Starvation gripped the survivors as the skies darkened with nuclear winter, blocking out the sun. Disease spread unchecked. The air itself became poison. I saw children, hollow-eyed, skin stretched over brittle bones, wandering through the ruins of their shattered world. They did not cry anymore. There was no one left to hear them. Their small hands clutched at empty bellies, their bodies trembling from hunger and radiation sickness. The world, once filled with laughter, ambition and hope, was now nothing but silence. There were no more borders, no more nations. No government remained strong enough to control the chaos. I saw millions, tens of millions of refugees wandering along desolate roads, trying to escape the war, but there was nowhere left to go. The world's leaders, those who once considered themselves powerful and invincible, now hid in underground bunkers, but even there they could not escape the impending judgment. I saw a world without a future. Is this the future of the world? I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped in my throat. I felt torn apart by fear and the brutal truth of what was to come. I looked around, searching for an escape, searching for something, anything, that could prevent this. But all I saw was despair. And then, amid the deepest darkness, a warm and compassionate voice echoed within me. You have fulfilled your mission well, and now you may rest. Come closer, my child. That voice was like a gentle breeze flowing through my soul, easing all my pain and fear. I felt an absolute peace surrounding me, as if with just one more step all suffering, all burdens would vanish. I was exhausted. I no longer wanted to return. I only wished to rest, to be freed from the agony I had endured all my life. I stepped forward, but at that very moment a powerful thought surged through my mind. I thought of my family, the wife I loved, the child I had not yet seen grow up. I thought of my homeland, the humble people, the familiar streets, the trees swaying in the wind. I could not let go of everything. I could not abandon them. I looked up and hesitantly spoke. Lord, may I return. I love my country, I love my family, I love the humble people. I love the roads and the trees. I am not rejecting you, but I truly cannot abandon everything. He looked at me, his gaze gentle yet profound. You do not wish to stay here, even knowing that for the rest of your life you may never return? Lord, that has been my greatest wish. But if my existence can save my country, my family, then I am willing to sacrifice, Lord. A faint sorrow flickered within me, yet at the same time a powerful calling urged me. I had to return. I knew I could not give up. I could not stand by and watch humanity perish without trying to change something. A gentle smile crossed his face. You will always have a place in my house. Return and save what you love." The men standing before me also smiled, their eyes filled with deep understanding, as if they had always known I would make this choice. I felt a complete forgiveness, an unconditional acceptance. And then I felt a powerful force pulling me, carrying me away, further and further. Darkness enveloped me once more. I heard the wind whistling past my ears, felt my body falling through an endless void. I did not know what would happen next, but I knew I had made the right choice. I would return, carrying with me a new mission, to warn mankind, to change what could still be changed, to live a life with purpose. And then I opened my eyes. A powerful jolt pulled me back, as if an invisible force was yanking me out of the endless void. I felt the full weight of my body suddenly return, as though I had just been thrown down from another dimension. I could hear the sounds around me, the rhythmic beeping of machines, the hurried voices of doctors, urgent commands being exchanged. The heavy atmosphere of the hospital engulfed me, and I realized I was back. The first sensation that hit me was excruciating pain. My chest felt like it was being crushed under an invisible weight, and each breath became a struggle. Then came the sharp, stabbing pain in my ribs. It felt as if someone was hammering into my ribcage with relentless force. 3 of my ribs had been broken during the resuscitation process. But strangely, I did not care about the pain. The only thing that filled my mind was not the agony of my body, but a single question echoing in my head. How was my family? My son was born with Down syndrome, and for so long I had carried the guilt, believing it was my fault that he would have to suffer for the rest of his life. I struggled to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt as heavy as if they had been sealed shut for days. My throat was dry, and every word I tried to utter burned like fire. I heard the rustling of white coats and the murmuring voices fading as someone noticed that I had regained consciousness. A moment later, a doctor walked into the room. He looked at me with an expression of sheer disbelief, as if witnessing a miracle beyond explanation. You have woken up," he stammered. "The tests indicated that you were brain dead. How is this even possible?" I saw the hesitation in his eyes before he finally spoke. "My wife and son, are they okay?" I asked, my voice weak but desperate. The doctor's expression was still filled with amazement, but there was also a deep emotional weight in his voice. "Sir, your family is outside, handling the paperwork. Your son, he no longer shows any signs of Down syndrome." I froze. I thought I had misheard. My heart pounded, and I stared at the doctor, trying to grasp every word he had just said. No signs of Down syndrome? That was impossible. My son had been born with the condition. The doctors had always told us that it was permanent, that it would never change. But as I looked into the doctor's serious eyes, I knew he wasn't lying. A miracle had occurred. A miracle beyond science, beyond logic. Emotions surged through me like a tidal wave, sweeping me away. I broke down into uncontrollable sobs, tears streaming down my face, not out of pain, but because I knew that this was the intervention of God. He had healed my son. He had granted me a miracle, one that I would never, ever forget. I took a deep breath, feeling every beat of my heart. I had returned, not as the same man I once was, but as a man carrying a new mission. After recovering, I could not stop thinking about what I had experienced. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself drifting through the endless expanse of space, looking down at the earthly world with an entirely new perspective. I no longer felt anger or resentment for what had happened to me. Instead, there was an overwhelming sense of peace. I realized that everything in this world happens for a reason, even the suffering I had endured. Without those dark days, I might never have had the opportunity to witness the miracle that God had shown me. He had taken me to the very edge of life and death, only to grant me a second chance, not to live as before, but to live a life of greater meaning. Since my return, I have felt his presence in every moment of my life. Each day that passes, I ask myself, why am I still alive? And I know the answer has always been there. God spared me because he has given me a mission, an opportunity to warn humanity before it is too late. What I saw of the future was not just a fleeting dream, it was a prophecy of what is to come if mankind continues to drown in war, hatred, and greed. I remember his words to me before I returned. Save what you love. And that is what I must do, even if it means sacrificing the rest of my life. I understand that this story may be too difficult for many to believe. A man who died, saw the afterlife, met divine beings, and returned with a miracle. I know there will be skepticism, and I know there will be those who mock me, but I do not care. I have seen God, I have seen the truth, and I know that he is always with us, whether we recognize him or not. None of us are abandoned or forgotten. No one walks alone in this world, but only those who open their hearts, those who truly seek him, will be able to feel his presence in their lives. Do you believe this? Do you believe that we are living in the most critical moment of human history? I do not expect you to believe me right away, but I hope that you will pause for a moment, reflect, and ask yourself, is there something greater waiting for us ahead? Are you truly living a meaningful life, or are you merely drifting along with the rules that the world has imposed upon you? This life is not eternal. Death comes for all of us, but the choices we make before that moment are what truly matter. If this story has touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Do not let doubt cloud your vision. Do not let fear turn you away from the truth. God is always with you in every step of your journey. The only thing you need to do is listen to him, seek him, and trust in him. One day, when the time comes, you too will understand that nothing is random. Everything has been predestined from the very beginning.